Okay, buddy, what do you think of Wilkins coffee? I never tasted it. Now, what do you think of Wilkins?
Malicious Muppets notwithstanding, I start my day with an elaborate ritualized morning espresso. It is something I cultivate. I schedule time around it, buy special equipment to do it, cultivate my palate for it, and endlessly rehearse its techniques. You are watching a time-compressed version of a 15-minute process. I repeat the same actions in the same order every day, isolating minute variables or refining my technical control to influence the taste of the next day's cup. People who drink their coffee medicinally or from plastic pods for a caffeinated kickstart might not understand why I choose to start my day with an analog activity requiring concentration and skill before the coffee. It's nourishing for me. It inspires me to read and research coffee history and techniques. It's a personal interest of mine, and most importantly, I get to share the results of my efforts with my wife and other loved ones with whom I share a cappuccino. That feels good. As a teacher, I approach my lesson design the same way I do my espresso, as something I value, savor, and enjoy most when I share it with others. I will share my process with you and demonstrate how I generate project-based learning ideas. First, I warm up the espresso machine with the portafilter attached so it doesn't pull heat away from the shot. Then I prepare a scale to measure out my dose. Experience and research has proven that single-origin coffee from small farms produce the most reliable flavor results. Having a recent roast date is also important, as more of the oils contributing to flavor will still be present. Like wine grapes, coffee beans' flavor is influenced by the soil, altitude, weather, geography, wash, and the roast. Light roasts tend to be brighter with more acidity and have a higher caffeine level. As roasts darken, the flavor gets increasingly smoky and the caffeine level drops. Medium roasts are more balanced in flavor and tend to be my favorite type, as dark roasts often have a carbony burnt taste. 18 grams of coffee beans produces a double espresso shot. The most important item in pulling a good tasting shot is a high-precision conical burr grinder. These are very expensive, but there is no shortcut to getting a proper grind. If you're interested in home espresso, I recommend that most of your budget be spent on the grinder. Only good grinders have the ability to create consistent, reproducible grounds. Without the ability to control grind size to fractions of a millimeter, there is no point in pursuing espresso at home. Once you've dialed in the grind size through trial and error, you can create the puck. I suggest pouring in the fluffy coffee grounds a little at a time and then using a distribution tool to spread them to the edge. Do not shake the filter basket. You are trying to evenly distribute the coffee. When the basket is full, gently press the coffee down with a tamper to make room for the remainder of the coffee. Repeat the process until the coffee is packed. The goal is to create a solid puck with no cracks. Cracks will cause the pressured water to channel, leaving precious coffee grounds untapped and a poor quality shot. Insert the portafilter into the espresso machine. At this moment, I heat my coffee cup in the microwave and prepare the milk for steaming and texturing. Milk has 3 important components: lactose, protein, and fat. Angle the steam 1 tip just below the surface to introduce air. You are also caramelizing the lactose, balancing the coffee's bitterness. When the milk reaches body temperature, sink the wand to heat and mix it. Now you are uncoiling the balled-up proteins. The proteins are polarized as far as water is concerned, with a hydrophobic and a hydrophilic end. The hydrophobic ends of the proteins retreat from the water inside of the air bubbles, creating a surfactant. This bubble structure remains intact up to about 160 degrees Fahrenheit, so don't overheat it. Fats fill in the space between the air bubbles and give the creamy texture and mouthfeel. The extraction forms 2 streams of espresso known as mouse tails. The first part is dark and syrupy, the second wave is liquid coffee, and the third is the caramel-colored crema. Each layer of espresso has its own specific gravity. Stirring with a spoon as opposed to swirling in the cup will mix the flavors, and the crema will still return to the top. Spinning the milk is called polishing, and will consolidate the bubbles in the middle. Pour the lighter milk in swirls under the crema with the foam at the end. The fancy latte art is practiced at this point. This movie itself is a project-based learning style project. It required research and skills new to me. While the topic isn't appropriate for high school, it is for my audience, high school teachers. The technique of free associating to generate ideas is a good one. Serendipity and research are complementary. Your passion comes through when PBL is rooted in your interests. Consider your students' interests when planning your projects so their passions come through. Having lots of interests doesn't make you a dilettante. Not respecting a pursuit or using ideas without crediting them does. Generate the ideas first. The project will follow. Part of your discernment is rooted in research. Okay.
Oh my God.
I drink
Man.
tea.
Coffee's hard.
That was wonderful.
Okay.
Oh.
So
Yeah, that was awesome.
the point is, here's what I tried to show. Two things. So making a movie about something I'm interested in. So you could take the movie as just about coffee, right? About the process, and hopefully you learn something about coffee. I learned something about coffee making this movie, and it intersected with things like science, the science of steaming milk. There's technique involved. I shot the whole thing with my phone. So it was a time lapse on my phone that I then just threw into iMovie and made use some of the comic filters. So it had sort of an animated quality. So I didn't use like regular footage. I used time lapse, and that gave it that sort of animated look to it. Maybe you noticed all the edits. So I personally had to learn something about the edits, and I had to, as I was making it, I had to think about what my narrative was all the time as I was making this thing, so that my idea about how to make coffee would come through. Layered on top of that was the PBL part, because the point of the movie was to be kind of didactic. And I tried to put things up that were sort of free associations about the topic. So because my point with this is going to be that you can literally make a project out of anything. It's an opportunity for you to do something that is interesting to you as well as your students. And it's also a way to empathize with your students and try to make something that is interesting to them. And the gold standard that we'll talk about tomorrow is how to get them to generate the project. That's sort of the highest level. This is kind of the medium level. The base level would be just creating a project, right? Doing any sort of project where you sort of tackle these ideas. The next level is getting them to think about the processes, and then the one just above that is thinking metaphorically, and then the gold standard is doing all of that, but the kids generate the project with your guidance. Okay. I'm going to go back to sharing.
So you're going to take us through the process of getting them to this level, right?
I am. So now I'm going to give you a little theory. So actually what we're going to do is we're going to do a project ourselves now. So if you take out your phone, and I had you download that app called Anonymous Camera, unless you have an Android phone, and then you have to sort of cheat a little bit. But if you have Anonymous Camera on iOS, you don't have to pay for anything to unlock anything, at least for our purposes here. So what I'm going to do is we'll do a project together right now, and I'm going to show you. I'll sort of do it in a didactic way, and I'll stop and talk about how I do this in class. Okay. One thing that's important is embrace process and destigmatize failure. So as an example, as I was learning to pour coffee and make latte art, it's way harder than you would ever think. And so I started taking a picture every day of the shitty latte art that I would pour. And as soon as it messed up, then I'd just pour milk all over the place. And I'd take a picture of it, and I started an Instagram account of my bad latte art, and I would write a story about like whatever it looked like to me, like some sort of Rorschach test. So like a dog carrying a platypus head and spine, or E.T. roller skating, or there's all kinds of things. I just came up with whatever, just as a creativity exercise, because of course, as you do this, it's going to always be bad the first times you do it. So, but you can take mistakes, and if you embrace them, and you know, it's a cliche that mistakes are opportunities, but they really are, because if you can always take an error and just make a left turn and take it in a direction that you didn't anticipate. So let's do a project. So to do projects, I'm going to walk you through this process, but I like to start with a big idea that's going to serve as our sort of guiding light. This one might be a little bit complex. Can juxtaposition reveal what beauty hides? So if I geared this is something that I would actually teach in my class, though I haven't. I made this up for this. So juxtaposition, I would teach my kids what that is. But rather than teach them a vocabulary definition of juxtaposition and have them memorize it and then quiz them on it, we're going to actually do some juxtaposition. And we're going to look at what other artists did of how they use juxtaposition, and then we will ultimately apply it to music. So I'm going to start with a very short video by a wonderful artist named Fred Wilson. And this is actually how I'm going to do with you how I would use videos in class.
Beauty, 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 beauty. I'm really interested in beauty. I'm interested in beauty if you think of beauty as an ultimate visual experience. But I'm also interested in beauty in that it can hide meaning. The world is complex, and often we try to separate out all these experiences. This is beautiful, this is ugly. This is a beautiful experience, that's all it is. There is no meaning, or the meaning is not important. People have to deal with the fact that there is meaning in beauty. There is meaning in ugliness. And so in a lot of my work, if I can, I try to bring out that tension. The whipping post and chairs is a perfect example, because chairs are really beautiful, that whipping post is certainly not. Whipping posts and chairs were from the first exhibition I did with museum collections. Was at the Maryland Historical Society.
Okay, so he's at the Maryland Historical Society. He was invited to use the pieces that are in their collection. And essentially this work of art is one of curation, taking the objects that were already in the museum. So they're of a time and a place, 19th century, in and around Maryland. And I'll let him continue with his story.
In 1992. It's a very traditional display in a certain way. There's no manipulation of the objects other than their positioning, and that changes the meaning or the relationship or how you think about them. And this is experience.
So, all he says explicitly that he didn't change or manipulate the objects in any way. He simply rearranged them.
The whipping post and chairs is a perfect example, because chairs are really beautiful, that whipping post is certainly not. Whipping posts and chairs were from the first exhibition I did with museum collections. Was at the Maryland Historical Society in 1992. It's a very traditional display in a certain way. There's no manipulation of the objects other than their positioning, and that changes the meaning or the relationship or how you think about them. And this is everything that I'm about when I'm working in museums and quite often when I'm working in my studio. Looking at kind of high-end decorative arts, being the chairs and the whipping post, that have a very different history, but it relates very directly in that those people who sat in the chairs had some relationship with those who were on the whipping post. Not acknowledging that things are complex, that beauty is complex. I think that's the problem, that people want to do that. So I enjoy making it complex for people, you know? 'Cause that's my world, you know.
Okay, so we have, where are you guys? So we had these objects that already existed in a museum, these very high-end, very beautifully crafted objects. And you can go to LACMA and see things just like that in their decorative arts collections. And I suppose when you see them just with other decorative arts, you appreciate them for their craftsmanship and their obvious aesthetic beauty. But what he did by arranging them sort of like in theater seating around a relationship, just by changing that context, he brought out meaning that wasn't readily apparent, right? That there is a power relationship between the objects, a power relationship of race, money, power between people who would sit in the chairs and between those with those who were on the whipping post, all right? So the act of curation and arrangement makes a statement that is very powerful. If I was in a classroom, I would ask them to, at face value, I would ask students to, at face value, just observe the images and tell me what they saw. And I would lead a discussion that would basically bring us to what I just said. Okay. Let me continue. So if you notice too in Fred Wilson's little clip there, he had African masks that were blindfolded with national flags, referencing colonialism. And when you blot out the eyes of a face, it calls attention to other things. In this case, it was very provocative to use a bandana with national colors on it. So that calls attention to the relationship between those colors and the origin of those masks. John Baldessari is quite famous for this. John Baldessari was professor of art at Cal Arts, and he taught generations of artists and did some similar things with blotting things out.
So, you've moved into painting giant schnazzes.
Marge, the mouth has had its say. Now it's time to find out what the nose knows.
That's a pull quote if ever I heard one.
Pretty much everything I say is quotable. Well, not that.
And it's rather funny to me that,
Say.
whoops, you can see how he painted in the Simpsons. There were the painted out faces with the nose remaining, and he did things like this where he took an image appropriated from a movie or an advertisement, and then with those little round stickers, he'd put a sticker on a face, or he would with paint cover up something in the image entirely. So what happens when you do this? Well, if you take away the face, you lose all emotional association with that image. And it becomes something that you can then project your own image. And you look for other cues in the image about what's going on. The other thing that happens is if you block something out with paint, all of a sudden the image loses the illusion of depth and everything looks very flat. So having a sticker on the face and blocking out these, the people and whatever that is in front of us, a dog or whatever it is, suddenly everything looks like it's in the same plane and it becomes very 2D. So there's metaphoric relationships that become illuminated. So more meaning comes out by blocking things out. If you do a quick Google search of John Baldessari, you can see lots of these things. These are some of his paintings where he started putting different colored dots on people's faces because the color became another layer of meaning. So if you look at the top, the second image, black and white with the red and green dot, the person on the left looks like it's a woman, the person on the right looks like it's a man, and we can't see either of their faces because of the dots. But red means stop and green means go. And so even though there may not be this power dynamic in the actual image, by putting the dots on their face, he's not only, he's pulled a meaning out that maybe wasn't there to begin with. So if we open up the app itself, we're going to do a project that's quite similar using artificial intelligence. So on my phone, I pull up the Anonymous app, and if you drag up from the bottom, you can see things here where it says solid. You can pick a yellow, white, black dot or a mosaic dot. This app, by the way, was created for people at protests so that images could be shared, but that the people in protests could be anonymized. So you can distort the audio, you can block out faces. It's pretty extraordinary. You can block the location metadata, etc. It also allows you to select whether you're going to pick the head or the body to black out. So if you make sure that you've picked the head and then one of these dots, that's up to you. I like the black dot myself.
Hey, quick question.
Yes.
I don't see the choice for head or full body.
Did you pull up this menu?
I did.
Let me open mine and I'll see.
Am I the only one? I see solid, distort audio, and then metadata. I don't.
It should be right between that and the.
Yeah.
I'm missing a.
Yeah, somehow I don't have
I don't know if
that.
I could. Oh yeah, my screen won't show. I don't know.
Maybe it's, I don't know. Maybe it's something I unlocked because I paid for it. I don't know.
No, it's there for mine. I didn't pay for
Thank you.
anything.
Try scrolling down a little bit. It's a scrolling menu.
Yeah, I scrolled all the way down, and the last one is safety and privacy.
Yes,
Maybe scroll up.
scroll up to the top.
Yeah, and so I see solid. I see the dot choices, and then
It's not a, anonymization is above solid.
I know there's nothing above solid. It's white for me.
Hmm.
That's strange. Does anybody else have that issue?
Mm-mm.
It looks like this.
Well, it should be right there.
So
It should
Oh,
be-
you know what? Maybe because it's such you need to maybe. Well, go ahead, Terry. I'll let you.
I think you have to make your words smaller.
Smaller.
Yeah.
I think it blocked it out.
Oh, make
We're
it.
not that old.
Guys, I have to
Same age, same month. It's not that old.
That's why I let Terry say it. I didn't want to say it.
Oh. Wait, let me see. Text size. How small do I have to put
Just
it?
regular, just
Normal.
a little smaller. Yeah.
What's
Tika
regular?
hacks. Tika hacks.
I don't know.
It's so small.
No, just go to like regular or one below what you were, maybe.
Yeah.
I still don't see it.
Maybe
Hold
close
on.
and open it.
No, the text got smaller.
Oh,
I'll go to the smallest text and see. Yeah, it's not doing anything.
That's weird.
I'll open and close again and see what happens.
You don't have the option to be anonymous.
I'll keep going while you solve that.
So this
So-
is the top of my menu. I don't have head or body at all. And this is the smallest text.
Feet and toes, feet and
That's
toes.
curious. I don't know.
I don't know.
Okay.
We'll try shooting. Maybe it'll just work.
Yeah.
So what I'm going to suggest we do is play a YouTube video. Like I just looked up Super Bowl commercials. And then with the anonymous app, I shot Super Bowl commercials. And I did what's called spray and pray. I played the commercials and then just shot lots and lots and lots of pictures. And it would blot people's face out because it uses a little bit of artificial intelligence and can identify a face, and then I'd take an image of it. And I'd shoot a whole bunch of them. This is my photo library after that, and you can see how many I shot. So in the space of like 2 minutes, I shot probably, I don't know, 70 or 80 pictures, maybe more, I don't even know. In other words, a lot, okay? And then I went through, and much like Fred Wilson, I curated what I have, and much like my my coffee Instagram, I used my imagination, and I looked at the images just at face value, and ignoring the original context of what they were in the advertisement, I decided to look at what was revealed by chance when looking at, by looking at the image that was made. So these were the pictures that I found the most provocative. These two guys wearing sort of like, Mormon missionary outfits, sort of corporate looking outfits, but they've got tattoos and they're clearly two white guys. And then back here is a woman sitting in a chair who's not participating in whatever they're doing. You can't see their faces, so you don't know what that is, but you can read body language, and without the face, you're free to sort of project your own feelings onto it. Here's a woman in a really surreal image of surrounded by wolves, kind of crouching down, and we can't see her face, so we don't see if she's afraid or what it is, but she's surrounded by wolves in an office who are all eating meat. Here's a guy, and somebody's hiding his head in the sand, which is a metaphor of itself. And he's getting a drink of water, but he's asking for the other guy to fill his cup. So it looks surreal, but you could craft a story, a pretty provocative story around it. And lastly, my favorite one was because there was a lot of motion on the screen, the phone actually blurred the image of the guy in front. And in the actual ad, these two guys are friends, and the guy in the foreground was turning around, and the guy that's stretching is smiling. But when you freeze it and you put a dot over his face, we can't see what his reaction is. He's just standing there innocently, and we can't see that the front person is actually turning around. In this excerpted context, it looks kind of like he's threatening. It's almost like he's going to hit him or something. So what I'm going to ask you to do is to, I can't find my cursor anymore, to hop on YouTube and search for some ads. And then with that app, just for like 2 minutes, just shoot a whole bunch of pictures. And then for another 2 minutes, just pick what you think is the most provocative juxtaposition of characters in the app, of photos that you saw in the app, and then we'll share them in like 2 minutes. Now, because we started late and everything, Dave was gonna give a quick lesson about how to use your camera and how to shoot. Because we actually have quite a bit to do still. Are there suggestions that you could give, Dave?
Muted. Sorry,
Muted.
I know I'm muted. Simple. Something I'm sure you've all have heard of. I'm gonna load this picture really quick.
Where are we supposed to go to take pictures again? I'm sorry, before you
YouTube.
start. Oh,
YouTube.
okay, sorry,
Yeah.
thank you. Go on, Dave, sorry.
Okay. I'm waiting for this picture to load. Okay. So I'm gonna, do I have the ability to share my screen, Stephen?
I think so.
I'm disabled.
Here we go.
Okay. So this is not a new concept to you guys. I know you've all heard this before. That's not what I want to look at. Give me ads. The rule of thirds. Who has not heard of the rule of thirds before? Or who has? Probably better question. Everybody. Basically, what we want to do when we take a picture, we want to offset the main subject. We want to treat the middle space like there's like an invisible grid, sections of threes vertically, sections of threes horizontally. And basically have 9 squares here, and you kind of want to treat the middle of the photograph or even a painting or a drawing. It's not just photography, it's basically making most 2D art. You want to offset the subject. So you want to treat the middle space like a bingo card, like the free space, you don't use it. Very seldom do you see that being utilized in design. A lot of times, like in countries' flags, like the flag of Japan, you've got the red dot, the rising sun, right in the middle. So sometimes in a minimal way, and some art and design, it works to have that object right in the middle if it's the only thing that you're looking at. When you have a photograph, you've got foreground, middle ground, background. You've got a lot going on in a composition. So try to treat the middle space, offset it, never put the subject right in the middle. What happens is you want to offset the main subject and have it, in this case, this is the positive space. The subject is this wolf or this dog. And the negative space, the vastness of the background that's out of focus. You've got the icebergs, you've got the seascape, the skyscape. And this offset, this negative space, it creates visual balance. It gives you a sense of scale. It creates a sense of it's visually pleasing to the eye. The brain likes to look for the subject. When you look at a photograph, it draws you into the image when you're looking for the subject. If it's given to you immediately, it doesn't make the images visually pleasing. So when you offset the subject, you use a rule of thirds, meaning offset it in the third. Offset, like this is a quadrant, this is a quadrant, quadrant, and quadrant. You want to leave the middle space empty. That's pretty standard. And when you do that, when you offset the subject, when you put the positive space to the corner, or you flip a side or a top or a bottom section, it creates visual harmony. That positive and negative space creates visual balance. So when you do one thing, like photograph an image or draw a picture or paint and offset the subject, you're automatically utilizing more elements of composition. These are the elements of composition. So rule of thirds already triggers multiple, like a domino effect of visual balance and positive and negative space. So when you're photographing, try to make sure that you always kind of offset the frame. Put your subject off to the corner or to the left or right or top or bottom. Treat the middle space like it's a bingo card and leave it alone, okay? That's all.
So part of that, so where that applies for us is when you're curating your images, the stronger ones are going to have that dot in one of the, you know, by using the rule of thirds, that's going to help draw your eye to the thing that you want it to look at. So
Right.
it's something to consider. Another point is when you do this, you don't have, when you do project-based learning, I mean, you don't have to know everything. You don't have to be able to be the resource for absolutely everything for your students. Go find someone who knows and have them tell your kids, okay? So take like a minute, 2 minutes. Let's say just a minute, like find a video of ads on YouTube and then shoot a whole bunch of pictures. And then we'll take a minute or two and pick your favorite one. And then, and we'll talk about it.
Terry said that if you do the rule of thirds properly, you get an extra gift card, just so you know.
Can you repeat the instructions one more time, please?
Yes. So using the anonymous camera, just pull up, look up, I looked up like Super Bowl ads on YouTube and just play the video. And then I just shot the screen like I was shooting people, except it's on the ad. And the dots will appear on people's faces. So get like a minute's worth of pictures. And then you go back in your photos and you just curate your favorite one.
Do you know every time you shop on Amazon, you're helping someone make...
Get it, Tika, get it.
And what you're looking for is the juxtaposition of power dynamics, or like we would have talked through all this in class if we had more time. You have to remember that this is source material for your project. It's not, you're not documenting something that exists. We're taking it out of context and changing the meaning by blocking out a face.
It's a good picture. I'm gonna do a screenshot.
Okay, that should be enough shooting. If you go into your app, your photos library, and look through the images that you captured, and try to find one. So this is the part where you have to sort of be creative and think, and evaluate the images at face value, and see if by blocking out a face, have you unwittingly created a power dynamic between the characters on the screen? Or does it create some surreal, juxtaposition or pairing of things? Or is something that was obvious now sort of abstract?
Does it just save to your regular images?
Mm-hmm. It might have and there might be an album specifically for the app.
Okay. Can't find it.
Yeah, it might have its own album.
Okay.
Let me see what it says. Yeah, there's if you go into albums,
yeah,
there's one that's called Anonymous Camera.
I must have done it. Okay, I'm gonna do it over. I must have done it. Thought I got some really good ones too.
Are you sure they're not there? I'm
yeah,
sure they're
I
there.
must have not been pressing. I'll do it again. I got it.
If we found one we like, what's the best? Should we just
well, so
send it to her?
No,
okay.
just hang on to it because I want to get to the we haven't got to the real stuff yet. If I was in class or I was doing this with students online, I would use like Flipgrid, and everybody could throw their images up there. A shared doc. I mean, frankly, Flipgrid's the best for this. If it was an overnight assignment, what I might do is create a quick website in Google Sites and share it with everybody, and then they would upload their image to a portfolio website from Google Sites, something like that. But for our purposes, we can just hold our phone cameras up to or phone screens up to the camera, and we can all look at them on Zoom. So after you find the one you like, what I would normally do in class is, if we had more time, everybody would give a really fast description of what they shot a picture of and how they now see it with the dot on their face, on the face. Yeah. So if you have an image, let's hold it up to the camera on the screen so we can all see, and I'm going to put my Zoom and gallery view. And then we can see everybody's images. Oh man, Caitlin's.
I picked a really bad website.
It's cool. Yeah. All right. So this would be, so there are a lot of ways that this project could now go. Like we could have discussions about, if you had a topic about, different power dynamics, we could relate it to what Fred Wilson was talking about. We could talk about more about John Baldessari. But this also gives kids the opportunity to, they have choice, right? They chose everything that they were doing here and they made something themselves. And the whole time that they're curating all those images, not only when they're taking the images, but curating them, and then you could edit them lightly or something, they have to think constantly about the meaning of it. So what I think is good about the project is it allows the student to tackle something that is quite abstract and tough to wrap your mind around, but the means of doing it, the technical means to do the project are trivial, is very easy, right? And yet the results could be very, very provocative. Like, you could do this project quickly like we just did and have it be part of a class discussion, or you could stretch it out and have kids come up with themes and create a whole portfolio of images. So it could be as small or as large as you wanted it to be. And you could spend one class doing it, or you could stretch it out over time and make it relate to more things. So in my case, I thought, well, how would I relate this visual thing about juxtaposition and recontextualization to music?
Hmm.
I'll show you. So here's a piece of music. That is a piece by Alfred Schnittke, Concerto Grosso. And so had I not, if I gave a piece like that to kids and just played it and we tried to talk about it, they wouldn't know what to make of it, right? They couldn't make heads or tails of that. You have this thing that almost sounds like Rococo classical music, almost Mozartian or Baroque. And then it disintegrates into this like Chernobyl like horror scene. Okay.
It sounded like somebody was slowing the turntable down or something.
Totally, right? It does all those effects, right? But now we have some vocabulary and ideas about appropriating things, juxtaposing things that don't go together to make new meanings. So you have something that's sort of Mozartian and familiar versus something that is maybe familiar in another way from video games or movie scores. So it opens us up to having that conversation and being able to evaluate it with some more insight and depth, having just worked on our own ideas of what juxtaposition is and how effective it can be in communicating something else. All right. So that's how you take something, how I would take something from a different discipline and apply it to the thing that's in my discipline. Okay. Because what I look for, I'm not looking for content, right? I'm looking for process. I'm looking for where do the processes intersect. And juxtaposition is a thing in visual art and in music. So if I can create a metaphor, it's easier to comprehend some of those things with something you can see, and then we actually did it, and then we thought about it over and over and over as we curated, and then I made the jump to the difficult music part. That's where it's abstract and kind of ephemeral. Then we have like a starting point, and we've sort of dealt with the difficult abstract part, and then I can give them my content. Okay, so that's how I use it. If you would open up the project-based learning Google form that I sent out, with the few minutes that are left, I kind of hoped to do a bit more of this, but I'll walk you through this. So you can do this for homework. And so I made a Google form. Are you all seeing this, by the way?
Yes.
Okay, so, and what I did was I opened it up so you could see everybody's responses. So this is how I think, this is how I come up with the project, all right? I try to connect practice across disciplines. So, for example, in the visual arts, I was thinking about juxtaposition and how those were relating in both music and in other things. And in coffee, all those brainstorms, those are the areas of intersection that I came up with coffee. When considering cross-curricular topics, think about what practices the disciplines have in common, not the content, okay? Because the project is something you want your students to do. So you think about what is it they're gonna do, and what are they gonna do, what are they gonna do over and over and over to drive that point home, okay? So when I made, for example, my birdsong project, I had to think, well, what am I gonna do between music appreciation kids and singing kids? So I made a project that required them to vocalize so that the singers had something to do. It was metaphoric, which they both do. And the examples came from contemporary art, history, and science. So it was cross-curricular. So I'm asking you to write a little discipline that's different from yours. If you're thinking of an actual project, list an academic discipline different from yours that you want to think of, a teacher you want to collaborate with, and then list the practices that you think they have in common. By the way, you don't even have to be right. It doesn't have to be right. It just has to be an idea, okay? And then step 2, the big idea. For the project we just did, it was about juxtaposition, you know, revealing what beauty hides, or layered meanings, okay? So think of a big idea learning objective to serve as your North Star. For my birdsong project, the big idea was that science says birds sing as a proxy for violence to defend their territory. So I asked my kids, if you were a bird, for what would you sing to defend from the coronavirus? My big idea was constructed to make students grapple with metaphor. Big ideas can be very simple and straightforward. What do you want your students to wrestle with over and over and over? For this project that we just did, it was about the big idea was how can you juxtapose disparate things to reveal meaning? How can beauty hide layers of meaning? Okay, and so that was the idea that you had to keep coming back to when you did your curation. And remember, the project part of it was very easy, very, very easy. Okay? So in the form, list your big idea. This is the most important part, is coming up with this big idea. Once you have your idea, and it can be very simple. I gave you a pretty complex, 2 complex examples, but the idea can be simple. And then step 3, you have to ask yourself, what assessment evidence and criteria let you know that this was a successful project? So for me, for example, like the dot pictures would be, is the image provocative? Does blocking out a face change the tone and the meaning of the picture, and can the student articulate that? Is it obvious in the picture, and can they articulate it with words? Okay. So if you come up with your assessment evidence from the get-go, then you know what you're teaching. And I gave some ideas about things to look for. So criteria-based checklists, self-assessment, written reflections. I always have kids write like their own program note to whatever they make to see if they can express in words what their piece is supposed to be. And then another important part to this whole deal is you try to have like some sort of show where they have to say over and over and over to strangers what it is that they did. And that really helps sort of solidify things. But you can do that in class too. Peer assessment and feedback. Group reflection response, analytic rubrics. And then, so if you would then make a list of the evidence that would demonstrate student understanding in your project. And then last, you backwards plan from that. So the important part here is you have to actually try it out yourself, and you have to time yourself to see how long does it take you to make a successful project. And then whatever I do, I multiply that time by 4 for the kids. So like shooting, if it took me a minute to shoot those pictures on YouTube, and then in like 5 minutes to pick the picture, multiply that by 4. And then you can determine how many pictures you want them to come out with after the fact. Okay. You also then figure out what materials you need and what skills you need to scaffold. And then go make a sample so that they have explicit examples. So I used like screen record on my phone to show you how I opened the app. I made a little video of me shooting the videos, and then I had all my samples, and then the final products that I liked the best. And I was able to show all of that to you. And then I also had the examples of the artists who did more sophisticated versions of what I was doing. When you think of this project, don't be afraid to steal. So in the Canvas, I put some links to Edutopia, which is George Lucas's educational foundation that has an endless wealth of sort of to the point, quickie ideas around project-based learning, but an easy search on the internet will find things. So if you don't have an idea, just steal one. And if you go through this process, it becomes relevant to your class and it becomes unique to you. But the real mind shift here is to think about the process, not the content. Walt, were you raising your hand or? No? Okay. Okay, so I went over time, but does that seem reasonable for a class, for homework? And then tomorrow we can go over those things, and I'll show you how to shorten or extend, and we can share projects. And also in the Google form here, you'll be able to see everybody else's response.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah. So just for clarity, we should walk through everything in the Google form and try to have that ready by the time we see you tomorrow.
Yeah, and listen, it doesn't have to be what I just did. Like, I was trying to show you short, but maybe middle to higher end type projects. This can be like project-based learning is really just about focusing on the process. I'm including the arts part, and that creates a whole other level of like dealing with metaphor and stuff. This does not have to be that. And if you feel stuck for a thing, just steal one off the internet, and then tomorrow I can show you how to like just go through the process, because that's the important part. Just fill out the things and make some sort of project, and then tomorrow I can show you how I might beef it up or modify it, or not. I mean, I don't know. That's what I would hope.
Just a tech question. I can't seem to write into the Google form.
Oh, really? Are you? Yeah. What are you using?
I'm on my Chrome.
Yeah, I think I know.
I need to make a copy. Okay.
Oh, because it's Loyola HS. It's restricted to Loyola.
No, I think.
Yeah, but I should be on my Loyola HS.
No, do you know, Terry?
Yeah, you shared. You actually gave us edit. You shared instead of sent to us. So I'm going to change it right now.
Okay.
I have access to your page.
Thank you.
I'll change it and I'll tell you guys when to refresh.
That's why.
I'm gonna delete the other one.
If you feel stuck on this, then tomorrow we can start with this and we can walk through the planner and like if you just can't do it, then I'll make one up for you. We can just do it live.
Basically, we're just creating a project where we want them to learn something.
But try to follow the sort of backwards planning way. you know, to try to think of your essential question, try to think of the big idea, and then work backwards and think about the process, and then think about how you evaluate it, and then make one. And use I think where the project we did together just now is useful is that the doing the project itself does not have to be elaborate. Like taking a picture of your computer screen is not a super hard thing to do. The hard part is coming up with the idea. That's the hard part. And thinking about, but I find just looking at Bloom's taxonomy helps stimulate things in my head. And at the end of the day, like the thing is, also remember, I've literally been doing this 11 or 12 years. So I've gotten very fast at it.
Yeah.
And, but after you do it a couple of times, like if you feel super stuck, don't worry about it. We'll walk through this tomorrow, and I'll walk through this form, because I literally think about this way. This is just how I do it. But I do think that working backwards is helpful, and the process of actually making a thing is essential. So I would just start with, and really, if like you have no ideas right now, go online and just steal one. Just take one. And the act of modifying it for your class is going to be good enough. That's how I started. And then I thought, oh, well, that's stupid. I would do, and that's how it started. As soon as you say, oh, I wouldn't do it that way, I'd do it this way, then you're off and running.
Okay.
I'm
Thanks.
sorry I didn't have that much time I didn't time this that well. I should have had a lot more time for questions.
Oh, this is good. Thank you. This is a
Oh,
good
this is great. This is great, Stephen.
Thank you. Thank you, David.
I have to run. Don't forget the rule of thirds.
Yeah. Bye, guys. Thank you. I'll see you tomorrow.
Thank you, Stephen.
See you
Thank you.
tomorrow. Yep.